Hi, Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu Melech Haolam Shehakol Yeh Bidvaro. Okay, Kimar, just press the let's go live button. So tell me if you see me. When you see me in person, yeah, I'm gonna start. Yeah. Oh, he was excellent, beautiful for him. I agree. I agree. It was an excellent for him. I agree. I agree. I told him that. I fully agree. Okay, my friends. Baruch Hashem Devora. Good evening, Jonathan. John. Good evening. Good to see you. Good to see you. Glad you're here. I didn't even see you sneaking in. Okay, my friends, are we ready? You see me live. That's great. Thank you. I see Ravit isn't watching. Facebook sees us. Okay. If you're on Chabad.org, let me know if you can see us. I didn't. Okay, 1 second. Second. Watch me Chabad.org. Okay. You're watching us on the side of the juggling there. Okay. Ready? Good evening, Kim. Good evening, Ravit. Good evening, everyone that's watching us. Good evening, all of you here in person. Good evening, Rick. Jonathan. Okay, Michelle, ready? Marsha, you're ready. Me too. So if you're ready and Shira is ready, so I have a tea. Thank you. I have a tea. Baruch Hashem. So here actually. Okay. Oh, and Steve is here, so now we really can start. So good evening, ladies and gentlemen. How are you all doing? So today we are going to do something rabbis love doing. We're going to talk about the same thing again and again. Shavuot Tov art. No, I'm not. I'm joking. We're going to do the same theme because what I am teaching you, my friends, is not a curriculum that I read somewhere, but I'm teaching you what I'm learning, what I'm enjoying, what I'm living with. So we're going to talk today about positive psychology versus negative psychology. Okay, and in case you can't get the hint, it's going to be very much connected to what I spoke about last week, but I will not repeat anything I said last week. So if you were here last week, don't worry, I'm not going to repeat it unless you enjoyed it, but then too bad. And if you weren't here last week, don't worry. Enough seats? You sit there, right now. You sit right in the front of me, Marsha. There you go, right in front. Keep an eye on you. Yeah. Marsha's right in the front. Perfect. So what we're going to learn today, if you're not paying attention, some of it may sound like we're repeating what we did last week, because I'm going to do the same Mishnah we did last week, but it's going to be completely different. Completely different, okay? Yes. Yeah, sure. It's being recorded. It's on our Facebook page and our YouTube channel. Yes. I mean, if you go to my YouTube page or my Facebook page after the class, it's there. So I'm on record now. Okay, so I want to begin by reading to you the first Mishnah of chapter 3 of Ethics of a Father. I apologize, I didn't prepare a joke. I didn't even think of one until right now, but we're going to get straight into the good stuff. It's going to be okay, and I have a few good stories that will make up for it. So don't feel bad. So if you're at home and you're watching and you're not on my personal page, I'm going to share the text. If you have a Siddur or a Pirkei Avot, it's going to be an interesting contrast between the teaching of Akavya ben Mahalel and our hero of last week, Akiva ben Yosef, who came from a family of converts. So let's start with the first Mishnah, the opening Mishnah of chapter 3 of Ethics of Our Fathers. Here we go. If you're watching my personal page, you should be able to see it now. Akavya ben Mahalel Omer. Oh, and before, okay, let's not go any further. No, I'll read it. Akavya ben Mahalel said, reflect upon 3 things, and you will not come to the hands of transgression. Know from where you came, know where you are going, and before whom you are destined to give a judgment and accounting. And then in case you don't know where you came from, where you're going, and who you're going to give a din, a cheshbon, a judgment and an accounting before, so the Mishnah tells you, from where do you come? Where do you come from? From a putrid drop. All of us began as a drop of semen that was created from the moment of intimacy between the father and the mother. You can see over here. No far. Are there more copies? So, check a share. Baruch Hashem. Yes, thank God. I should have printed more. So, number one, you should know, don't get too full of yourself. You think you're a big hotshot. You think you're someone important. You think you're someone, a big macher. You know what a big macher is, right? Of course. Don't think such a big shot. After all, where do you come from? You come from a putrid drop of semen. That's where you come from. It's pretty dramatic. I know, but he wanted to really hit home a point. Sometimes the way to make a point is to use dramatic language. Where are you going to? It's going to get more dramatic. You know where you're going, Esther? No, I shouldn't pick on you. You know where you're going? To a place of dust, worms, and maggots. Yum. There are some people that are very afraid that they don't want to be buried in a Jewish cemetery or any cemetery for that very reason. They don't want to be in the dirt. They don't want to be in a place of worms and maggots. So they'd rather be in a marble locker. That could be dramatic. You know what happens to meat in the locker? And you ever, disgusting. If you ever left your backpack in your locker for more than overnight, over the weekend, and you came in the morning in your car, right? And you come after the weekend, you wonder what rotting, liquefied meat would look like in a marble locker that's sealed hermetically so you can't smell it when you walk by, but it's literally juice. That's and I've heard from a rabbi that once opened one to do a proper burial. It's literally the body become juice, so it ain't better than the worms and the maggots in the cemetery. But that's not maybe the best argument to give to someone who says, I don't want to be in the cemetery. I don't want to go to worms and maggots. Okay, you can become meat decomposing in a metal locker in the Florida sunshine instead. Enjoy. You'll say that. Okay, go ahead. Beef jerky? No, not beef jerky. Because beef jerky is salted to preserve it, so it's hard.
That's true. It's solid when pizza.
Yeah. So number one, where are you coming from? Semen. Where are you going to? The grave, to the worms and the maggots. If you're lucky. Yeah. If you're not lucky, it's worse. It's where we become ash, as if ash is better. Anyway, that's a different class. And number three, and there's so many jokes I would have thought for a minute, so many jokes I'm already before whom you are destined to give a judgment and accounting, before the King of Kings, Melech Malchei Hamlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the Holy One, blessed is He. So the Mishnah is a pretty dramatic Mishnah, and it's said by someone who's a pretty intense person. You can tell there's a certain intensity. Akavya ben Mahalal. So let's just for a moment, who is he? I'll tell you the truth. I myself do not know much about Akavya ben Mahalal. He's not from the very famous, well-known rabbis. So I quickly searched, and I came across two stories that give you a very clear idea of what kind of person is Akavya ben Mahalal. The first story is that you're going to see he's a very principled person. This is a person that does not bend for other people's opinions or other people's, view of life. He's very set on his path. So there were 4 different areas of halacha. It's irrelevant what they were, it's just technical details, but there were 4 different things in which he argued with the majority of the sages. But he wouldn't back down, even though he was outvoted and the halacha always follows the majority. He refused to back down and accept the majority rule. And they were trying to push him. And on one occasion, they actually told him that if you're not going to back down, we'll put you into excommunication because you're fighting against the halachic rulings. And it was implied that if you will accept it, we're going to elevate you, we'll give you a position of prominence in the yeshiva. Most people would sort of say, toe the party line. And instead, you know what he said? He refused the promotion. And he said, I would rather be called a fool all of my lifetime than be a sinner for one moment. In his mind, to go back on the tradition, and he explained that the reason why he held these opinions, despite being outvoted, because that was a tradition he had received from his teacher. So he felt that he didn't have the ability to rule differently than what he had been taught by his teachers. It wasn't his own opinion. If it would be his own opinion, maybe I'm wrong, I should change. But this is what his teacher had taught him. So to go against my teacher would be a sin. So I'd rather be called a fool by all of my friends my entire life and be considered, that's a Meshuggah that won't, you can't talk to him, than be a sinner for one moment where I go against my teacher. Very, very principled kind of person who won't bend because someone said something to him.
Was his teacher still?
Probably not. Or else his teacher could have. I imagine his teacher was not alive at the time. The second story that I read about Akavi ben Mahalo was on his deathbed. And on his deathbed, his son comes to him, and his son asks him to give him a recommendation to the other chachamim, the other sages, to give them a good word, that they should, give him a job, give him an important seat in the yeshiva. So he tells his son he won't do it. He wouldn't give his own son a letter of recommendation to the rabbis. So his son assumed that his father wouldn't give it to him because his father saw something wrong in him, that there was some flaw, something about his character that wasn't right. So he says to his father, "Father, before you tell me, in what area am I lacking that you don't want to give me a letter of recommendation?" So he says to his son, "By your own deeds will you make yourself welcome, and by your own deeds will you make yourself obnoxious or not liked." Meaning, I will not write you a letter. You will have to earn your own. There's nothing wrong. I have no criticism of you that makes me upset with you. I just want you to work and make your own path in life. So for me to write you a letter, that's not the way it works. You have to make your own path. Your own deeds will make you liked and respected by the sages, and your own deeds will make you not liked by the sages. Meaning, Akavi ben Mahalo is not going to do his son a favor and try and, sort of say, turbocharge his promotion in the yeshiva. You're going to have to work for it and earn it all by yourself. I don't know. That's not the point of the story. The point of the story is that here's a man who's super focused on authenticity, on self-awareness and humility, and not changing for other people, but being focused only on the truth and on God. And therefore, with that context in mind, when we read the very dramatic statement of Akavi ben Mahalo, where he tells a person not to not sin. If you paid attention to the text of the Mishnah, what did he say? Think deeply, reflect upon three things, which, by the way, reflect is not the same thing as know. We all know where we came from. We all know we're going to the grave, but we don't think about it that often. If we would be more consciously aware and spend more time thinking about our mortality, we would probably be a little bit different, a little bit more sensitive, a little bit more humble, but we don't reflect on it. Says Akavi ben Mahalo, a person should reflect on his very, very unnoble origins, a putrid drop of semen. You should reflect and spend time thinking on the fact that one day you'll die. And all your pleasures of this life, what will they be? Nothing. Nothing. You can't take your money with you. You can't take your wealth. You can't take your pleasures. All the things you do in this lifetime, they won't remain. So instead, focus on that which will remain, the meaning, the values, the love, the connections, the mitzvot. Reflect on this. Think deeply about it. Remember, you are going to one day have to stand before the King of all kings and give an answer. God is going to open that book. He's going to say, well, what happened over there? And you're going to have to answer for that. And if you reflect on that, this won't only keep you from sin. What will it keep you from? What does it say? If you look carefully, what will reflecting on these three things keep you from? In the Hebrew, he says, think about these three things. You won't come li de avera, to the hands of transgression. Is that what it says? You won't sin. You won't even come close to sinning. You won't even come to the temptation of sin. Because the moment you're tempted to sin, you're going to see something tempting. And then think, what's the point of eating that? Or indulging in that pleasure? Or being with that forbidden woman or whatever? Because after that, it's just more weight to take to the grave with me. If you think about that, you're not even going to have a temptation. You're not going to have a desire. And therefore, he says, you should live such a life of purity, such a life of self-awareness and humility, recognizing your origins and your faith and the fact that you'll stand before God, you won't even have a temptation to sin. Okay? Now, I will tell you two things about this Mishnah before we get to what I want to really talk about, which is the contrast of this Akavia to someone with a very similar name but a very different view on life, whose name is Akiva. And soon we're going to talk about Akiva and how Akiva also talks about three things. The same three things from a completely different perspective, not with the negative psychology of recognizing where you might have done wrong and how to protect yourself from sin, but from the positive psychology of understanding who you really are. But first, I want to point out two things. Number one, Akavia is saying that you need to look at all three things. Because if you would only think about one or two of these thoughts, that alone wouldn't stop you from coming to sin. So if a person would only think about the fact that our origins is just semen, we're not that important. We're not that, what are we after all? We're just temporary human beings. You know what that might lead a person to feel? That's where I came from. So what do you expect from me? I'm a useless person. Of course I'm immoral. Of course I'm have all these unhealthy and unholy desires. That's my origins. Reminded of a joke. To say with a joke. So this kid, I have said this joke many times. It's a great joke. So this kid is confused. He comes to his mother. He says to his mother, "Tell me, where do we come from? Doing a project in school. How does man created?" So what does the kid tell his mother? Tell the kid, how was man created? Once upon a time in the Garden of Eden, God made Adam and Eve. He fashioned them with his hands. Okay. He comes to dad. Dad, where does man come from? Evolution. Once we were gorillas and apes, and then over time we evolved. So he comes back to his mother, says, "I don't get it. Dad said, you said we come from God. Dad says we come from apes and gorillas. Which one is it?" So he's talking about his side of the family. I'm talking about my side of the family. Right? Yeah. So basically, if a person, I come from a semen, I come from a woman and a man in a bed having intimacy, like, you expect me to be moral and righteous? Of course I'm immoral. Of course I'm the desire all these things. Of course I have fantasies and cravings and urges and impulses I can't control. That's why I really am. So that alone is not enough to stop you from sinning. So you got to think of the second thing. Don't get too carried away in those pleasures and those moments of impulse, because you take it to the grave with you. But that also is not enough. Because okay, so who cares what I do in this lifetime? So I'll die and it's all over. I'll die and it's all, nothing will come from it. So that's why you need the third teaching, that when you do pass, don't think that you just end up in the grave. That's your body ends up in the grave. But your soul will stand before the King of all kings. The Holy One, blessed is He, and have to answer, and have to explain and justify the behaviors that it did and the actions that it chose. That's going to be very difficult, and that will keep you from sin. Okay. Yeah, but part of it is the humility of recognizing I'm not so important, I'm not so great, so don't get carried away with yourself. Again, Akavu is a man of very, very strong virtue. It's not just you're going to have to give a judgment for God. You're nobody besides for God. That's all that you are. So don't think you're someone important. You're a nobody. You come from nothing. You're going to end back as nothing. Your only existence is to do commandments, to do Torah, mitzvot. So when you come to heaven, you'll get rewarded, you get punished, etc. One more very beautiful idea in this Mishnah that, to me, every time I see these words, it's in my head. If you pay attention to the third thought, he says, what's the third thing to think about? Before whom you are going to give a din. What does din mean? A judgment. How's it translated here? A judgment and an accounting. So Hashem asks a beautiful, powerful question with a beautiful, powerful answer. How does it normally work? Do you first give the judgment or you first do the accounting? Not talking about if you're passing a bill in Congress and the Senate where the numbers mean irrelevant. Okay, another 400 trillion, 3 trillion, 5 trillion, 10 trillion. It's not their money anyway, so they don't know whatever. Talking about like people actually have to pay their own bills. So do you first do the counting, you first do the numbers, and then you come to the final verdict? Or do you come to some people do that. They first have a verdict. Okay, now let me hear the court case, right? I already know who's right. Okay, now that I made my decision, now we can go through the process. You can tell me what you want. But God's not like that. So it should be before whom you are going to give a cheshbon v'din. remember before whom you are going to give an accounting, and then will be the verdict. Plus, I'll ask you one more question. Do we in heaven give judgment? No, we're only giving the accounting. We're only justifying the number, so to say. How much we did give, how much we didn't give, how much sins we did. We're not the ones giving the verdict. So why does the text say, remember before whom you are going to give the verdict and the accounting? We're only going to give the accounting. Exactly. So the Baal Shem Tov teaches, I've said this before, it's a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful teaching. I think it's very powerful. The Baal Shem Tov teaches that we actually give the verdict that we will be judged with when we judge other people. God puts us the opportunity to see someone else talking during services. I don't know. And he watches how we react and how we judge them for their sin, for their indiscretion, for their moment of selfishness. And the way we judge them, that's the verdict. Then we come upstairs, God makes an accounting. Oh, you also talk during services. Because I notice people that do that. Some of the people that complain the most. When they're talking, they're talking. When someone else is talking. How can someone talk? God forbid. I'm not talking about anyone. This show, no one has ever spoken during services, ever. I'm talking about, in another show. There, that spot over there, you go, there they talk. Here, never happened. But so God foresees how you judge other people. He sees where you, and then there's the accounting. Oh, you see, you were a little selfish. And when you were selfish and you saw him being selfish, you said So, okay, we're going to judge you the way you judged others. And that's what it means. Before him, we're going to give a din, the din, the judgment, the verdict that you gave during your lifetime. That's how God makes the accounting to give you the verdict that you're going to get when you come to heaven. Okay? It's a beautiful teaching. I love that teaching. We could do a whole class on that. But as you know, we're on a journey trying to understand a Hasidic and Jewish perspective to psychology, to understanding how we should view ourselves, as we've been discussing already for 2 weeks, not to judge ourselves by our actions, not to judge ourselves by what we do, but rather by who we are. Who we are in our core has to be what ultimately defines us. And unfortunately, it's very easy when we judge, especially when we judge others, but even when we judge ourselves, when we judge ourselves, become very critical and very harsh, and we start judging, which is a lot of psychology, and we start explaining why we behave in certain ways. Why he did this? Because he has trauma, he had a rough childhood, because he went through this and this experience, so now he's blah, 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 blah. And we start explaining and rationalizing why we have certain tendencies and why we react in certain ways and why. And so, very good. So the psychologist or the therapist figured out why your childhood makes you react in this way or why you're triggered by this person, etc. Guess what? You now have a victim mentality where there's a certain sense of I'm not responsible because I've already become defined either by things I've done in the past or defined by things that other people did to me in the past, as opposed to what's a relatively new form of psychology called positive psychology. Positive psychology, one of the main leaders of positive psychology, I was reading about it today, is Martin Seligman. Martin Seligman was a researcher at the University of Pennsylvania. And he is one who devoted his whole career to building this new approach to psychology to focus not on the reason, justification for our behaviors, but rather to focus on building up the core, the core identity of who we are. He wrote a book on this called Learned Optimism in 1990. And this is the whole idea of learned optimism, of learning to teach yourself that you're not defined by the negative things you've done, but by who you are. However, what I want to share with you tonight, my dear friends, is that Martin Seligman might have been a very smart man who wrote a very good book called Learned Optimism. It's a good book. But Rabbi Akiva, our hero, beat him to it by about, 1,500 years, 1,800, 1,500, by a long time. So what does Rabbi Akiva teach? So Rabbi Akiva is in the same chapter, but not Mishnah 1, but Mishnah 14. Let's read Rabbi Akiva's 3 thoughts, and let's see how these 3 thoughts are the same, yet so different. So similar, but so different. You ready, my friends? Again, if you're watching at home, if you're watching on your computer, you can see I'm sharing my screen. Or open up a Pirkei Avos, chapter 3, Mishnah 14. Hu Haya Omer. He used to say. Who is he? Rabbi Akiva, because this is a few Mishnahs that he's teaching. Rabbi Akiva used to say, Chaviv Adam Shenivra B'Tzelem, beloved is man, for he was created in the image of God. Especially beloved is he, for it was made known to him that he had been created in the image of God, as it is said, for in the image of God he made man. So the first thing Rabbi Akiva wants you to know is that you are beloved and cherished in the eyes of God. Not only are you so beloved that God made you in his image, he told you he made you in his image. So last week I explained what it means to be in the image of God, that we're standing upright, that the head controls the heart. We're not like animals that are flat, but we're upright. We can change ourselves. But the point is, you are in the image of God. But not only does God love us enough to make us his imitation, God wants us to appreciate how he made us in his image, in his mold, an imitation of him. Pretty cheap imitation, but imitation nonetheless. And so God tells us, and he quotes a verse telling us that we are in the image of man, in the image of God, God made man. Number 2, beloved is Israel, in that they were called children to the all-present one, the Hamakom. Especially beloved are they, for it was made known to them that they are called children of the all-present, as it is said, Banim atam la'Hashem Elokechem, you are children to the Lord your God. Okay? So not only does God love us so much that he treats us and views us as his children, but God even tells us, I love you like a child. And third, beloved are Israel, in that a precious vessel was given to them. Especially beloved are they, for it was made known to them that the desirable instrument with which the world had been created was given to them, as it is said, for I give you good instruction, forsake not my teaching. The good instruction is the Torah, which is a vehicle, a vessel, a tool, as we explained last week, a tool by which we can transform and fix and change the world for the better. And not only did God give us the tool, the blueprint of creation, Torah is the blueprint of creation, but God told us what it is that he gave us. Okay. So, at first glance, if you read this Mishnah, Mishnah 14, it seems to have no connection to Mishnah 1. It seems to like be 2 different Mishnahs. 2 different people. I mean, they both have 3 in there, but that's about as far as the connection goes. Right? However, I saw a commentary on Shabbos that actually tells us that this teaching of Akiva is a direct refutation or argument on the teaching of Akavia. Let's go through the 3, one by one. We're not going to rush this. And let's see the difference in each one of these 3, one by one. Okay? So, let's start with number 1, and we're going to respond to each one. Obviously, Akiva is not denying what Akavia B'Mahalal says. It's true. It's not denying that you came from a putrid drop of semen, and a little humility is good for us. Sometimes we get a little too carried away in how important we are. It's good to be reminded that you're not so important. He's not denying or disagreeing with the value in that, but as a teaching for life, as a teaching that people should reflect upon and meditate on to create a sense of identity, Akiva says the exact opposite. Akavia B'Mahalal said, how should a person self-define themselves? As a nothingness. As a putrid drop. What's your self-definition? What's your course as Akavia B'Mahalal? A man and a woman were in bed and they made you. And that's all you are. A putrid drop of semen. Says Rabbi Akiva, that's not who you are. You know who you are. You're an image of God. You're holier than the angels. So we discussed last week, the angels are not in the image of God. Angels are creations that are very, very one-dimensional creatures. And we have 10 sefirot. And again, it's not a class on the image of God and how we reflect the image of God, but we have all the faculties of God, so to say, metaphorically speaking, of intellect, of emotions, of chabad, of chagas, of whatever. The metaphorically, what God's ways of interacting with the world, He gave to us. And that's why we're multidimensional. We have different emotions, different characters. Rabbi Akiva is saying, where do you come from? You come from the mold of God Almighty, of God Himself. You are the image of God, and hence you contain within yourself the ability to be infinite and pure and absolute and unequivocal and have free choice, which is the next mission 15, about free choice, just like God Himself. You are a mirror of God, you're a reflection of God, you contain within yourself a spark of infinity, you are holy and sacred and pure, etc. Why do you sometimes sin? So the famous teaching in the Gemara that says a person does not commit a sin unless a ruach shtus enters him. You know what shtus means? You know what shtus means? Silliness. That's a very nice word. Foolishness. In Yiddish, a shaita is like an idiot. Right? Shaita is an idiot. Fool. A person wouldn't sin unless something foolish entered them and made them go off of the normal path. So why do we have the normal path? And then to turn, a woman turns away, we are distracted from our baseline setting. Meaning, what's our starting point? Is our starting point a putrid drop of semen? Is our starting point an immoral nothingness? And then if you do a mitzvah, that's something accomplished, something great. Or is our starting point the reflection of God? The mold, the mirror reflection of God Almighty. You're going to say it's like as opposite as could possibly be. Akiva is saying to a rabbi before him, you're saying that we should be humble. I think we came from nothing. No. I say we should be humble by realizing we come from everything. We should be humble by realizing that we are reflections of infinity. And that should humble us. So how are we self-defining? Not as nothing, but we're self-defining as reflections of the omnipresent Hamakom, the all-present everything. That's teaching number one of Rabbi Akiva. Because in Rabbi Akiva's mind, our core identity is God and good. And everything else is a distraction, it's a temptation, it's an illusion, it's alien. Okay? Reminded of a story of the Rebbe, coming from the Rebbe's yard site, where someone came to the Rebbe and complained to the Rebbe that he interacts with a professor, interacts with a lot of people. And he discovered that the more you get to know a person and the more you dig inside them, the more you uncover their selfishness and their ego and their more animalistic base desires. You meet a guy, a wonderful person, you say, looks so nice, get to know a little more. Everyone's fake, everyone's full of it, everyone's not so nice on the inside, which is very much Freud's psychology. If you go, the id of a person is an animal. That's what everything comes from our core urge of the id of the person. So the Rebbe told this professor, I'll give you a parable. You're walking down the street. Could be being put out the window, and what do you see? Beautiful trees and buildings and houses and sidewalks, and everything looks beautiful, right? What would happen if we start digging underground? Sitting and find the dirty roots and the sewage lines and the plumbing and the foundations of the house. The foundations of the house are not pretty. There's no decorations and chandeliers and art painting on the foundations. Just ugly brick, cement. And the roots of the tree underground are not pretty. There's no leaves and flowers and fruits growing on the roots. They're just dirty roots. And under the house, under the street, there's the sewage lines, and it's not pretty. So the professor's agreeing. Yeah, that's exactly what I'm saying. Rebbe didn't realize where the Rebbe was going. Yeah, exactly my point. People look nice on the outside, dig a little deeper, and you see the real thing inside. So then the Rebbe said to him, if you were to keep on digging even deeper, past the plumbing lines and past the tree roots and past the foundations of the building, you know what you would find? Gold or oil or copper, depending which country you're in. Minerals, copper, iron, you would find deep, great treasures. So yes, it's true. If you dig a little bit under the surface, what will you find? The foundations, stuff buried underground. But if you dig deeper under the surface, what will you find? The diamonds that are buried deep, deep underground. So I think Rabbi Jacobson that made the line that Sigmund Freud discovered, he dug deep within human psychology to discover the id of a person. And the Rebbe dug deeper to discover the yid in the person. It's not my line, but it's a very good line. Understand? So psychology is negative, a lot of it. Dig a little deeper, you're going to see all these traumas, all these insecurities, all these inferiorities that make a person like act like they're very big and tough because they're really masking their own fears and their own traumas and their own insecurity. So they act tough and they act mean because deep down they're damaged. They've been hurt. They've been, they're suffering from whatever they're suffering from. They might not even know themselves that they're damaged. They think that they're perfect, really inside. Their mother, what their mother did to them. Right? Says the Rebbe, dig a little deeper. Past the id, what will you find? The yid. Find the yid. That's what Rav Shem Tov is teaching us. It's a diamond down there. When you find diamonds, what do you do with diamonds? You throw it away? You don't yell at the mud. You clean it, you wash it carefully, gently. You don't want to damage it. Carefully, you clean the diamond. You won't say, this is dirty. It's beautiful. You just got to wash away the dirt. So that's positive psychology. That's looking at life, not by the limitations of where we came from externally, but by looking at life deeply, deeply, deeply. Where are you really from? Ultimately, what are you? A reflection of God. Okay. Number 2, what's the second line of the Mishnah? Akavi b'Mahalal said, remember, contemplate, think deeply about the fact that where are you going to? Where are you going to? Place of worms and dust and maggots. Ooh. Yeah, it's pretty dark, huh? What does Akiva say? Akiva says, my dear Rabbi Akavi b'Mahalal, I'm going to have to disagree with you. A person should know that he is a child of God. Now, I want to show you something very interesting. If you're paying attention and you read the verse, he brings a verse to prove that we are children of God. What verse does he bring to prove that we are children of God? What? The verse in Deuteronomy, the last of the 5 books of the Bible, that talks about that we are children of man, that we are children of God, and therefore we cannot. I'll read you the verse. Let me show you the verse because it's actually important. It's a pretty strange verse, actually. It is in Deuteronomy chapter 14. I wrote numbers, but it's a mistake. It's in Deuteronomy. It's in Dvarim. I made a mistake when I wrote numbers. Chapter 14, verse 1. The verse says, you are children of the Lord your God. And the verse continues, you shall neither cut yourselves, nor make any baldness between your eyes for the dead. You're not allowed to cut yourself. In those days, the pagan form of worship was, if a person died, what did you do? You cut out your hair, you pulled out your hair as a sign of grief, and you made gashes on your skin. You cut yourself, and there's a public form of mourning. So the verse is saying, you are children to God. You cannot act. Here's a whole list of pagan worships and different things that were forbidden from those times. And the first one in this verse is, you're children of God. Don't gash yourself. And don't make baldness between your eyes like the non-Jews do for their dead. So before I explain to you this verse, isn't it strange that when Akiva wants to bring a verse that we are children of God, and that God told us we are his children, he brings this verse that was said 40 years after we left Egypt, where it's giving a law about death. You know, there's much, much more beautiful verses when God appeared to Moses and said at the burning bush, I've come to redeem my children. Go to Pharaoh and say, my child is Israel. B'ni b'chayri Yisrael. God says to Moses, go say to Pharaoh, Israel is my firstborn child. There's so many beautiful verses where God is explicitly telling Moses to tell the world, the Jews are my children. And then at Mount Sinai, where God says, you're my chosen children and my chosen nation. And there's a few different times, there's twice by the Exodus, where God explicitly calls us his children. And where God chooses us and is friends within the Jewish child and the Egyptian child, etc. And instead, when Rabbi Akiva wants to bring a verse to prove that we are children of God, not that you need a verse to prove it, because today we accept that, But if you wanted a verse to prove it, what would be the verse to prove it from? Not this one. It will be from the one when God said it clearly. Even here, it's not like in the context of God is speaking to the Jewish people. It's in the context of death and mourning. A much better verse would be God saying to Moses, the burning bush, go to Pharaoh and say, the Jews are my firstborn child. That would be a good verse. There is a beautiful explanation on this verse from the Or HaChaim. The Or HaChaim, and also the Barbanel, I think, brings this. The Or HaChaim says that why would people cut themselves? Why would they cut their bodies when the person died? The non-Jews, the idol worshippers. Because they saw life as physical. Person dies, it's over. So we're cutting the body to show that the body is over, it's dead. God is saying to the Jew, don't cut your body, don't mourn excessively for death, because even though the person has physically passed away and the body's being laid to rest, they haven't died. The soul lives on. And in fact, the Or HaChaim gives a beautiful example. A beautiful example. He says that there was a person who sent this child to a faraway land in order to do business in this place. 1 second. So he went to this faraway land to go do business and to go open a company, or a branch of the company. And for many, many years, this child settled there, became close to many people there. He married someone from there, had kids there, did a whole life for himself. And then one day, the father is getting older, I guess. So after many years, the father summoned the child to return back home. Told the child, come back home. So the child is now leaving all of his new friends, all of his new acquaintances, all of his new co-workers and all that, to go back to his childhood home, to go back to his father. So the people are sad to say goodbye to him because they're not going to see him again. But it's not a tragedy. The child is not lost. In fact, he's going back to his origin. He's going back to his home. He's going back to the bosom of his father where he grew up. Back to his parents. So too, God is saying, you are children to Hashem, your God. Don't mourn excessively when the person dies. Of course, there's laws of mourning and shiva and the grieving for a person who died, because we're normal human beings. So we're going to feel healthy, normal emotions. But don't take it to an extreme. Don't start immolating or self-destructing. Because the soul is still alive. And all that happens when the person dies is the body is laid to rest, but the soul lives on. The soul, not just that it lives on, the soul is going back home. That's what it means. You are children to God. The soul returns back to where it came from, back to God. So what did Akiva ben Mahalal say? What will prevent a person from sinning? Think about the fact of going to the cemetery, that one day your body is going to be buried. Says Rabbi Akiva, no, the exact opposite. Think about the fact that one day your soul is going to go back home to your Father in heaven. Don't think about the fact that your body is going to be put back into a grave. Think about the fact that your soul is a child of God, and your soul is going to return back to where it came from. Your soul is going to go back home to our Father in heaven. It's beautiful. He's directly responding to Rabbi Akiva ben Mahalal. Yes, focus on the fact that life is short. Remember that life is short and fleeting, and we're not here forever. But not because when it's over, we get buried in the dirt. Because when it's over, what are we taking home with us? We're coming back home after going to school, going to business, what are we going to show our parents we did for ourselves when we were gone? It's a whole different motivation. It's not that you're going to die and become nothing. It's not that you were born nothing and you return to nothing. You were born a reflection of God. You were born a reflection of everything. And when the time when this world ends, you're going to return back to the everything from which you came from. Beautiful. Beautiful. Okay. So now let's go to the third meditation of Akiva ben Mahalal. What's the third meditation? He says to reflect on deeply that will keep you from sin. What's the third meditation? Yeah, remember that you will have to give a judgment and accounting before the King of all kings. Says Rabbi Akiva. And so what is he saying? Don't think you're going to get away with it. You're not going to, if you do trouble, if you're going to be wild and sin, someone's keeping track. Like this, like Jewish guilt at its best, right? Jewish girl, you think you get away, you're going to get punished for this. Says Rabbi Akiva, what does Rabbi Akiva say in the third teaching? Help me out, my friends. What does he say? You have it in front of you. Chaviv in Yisrael. How precious are the Jewish people that they were given the Torah. Read it. What were they given? The instruction they were given, not just to try, they were given the tool, the vehicle by which to change the world. Meaning, God gave us not a burden, not an obligation by which we're going to be judged and punished if we sin. God gave us a tool by which to transform the world. You can look at the Torah in two ways. One way that sadly many people look at the Torah is a book of restrictions, a book of rules and laws and conditions and obstacles and problems. You can't do this, you can't go there, you can't do that. The whole list of restrictions. That's one way of looking at it. And we walk around with the fear if I'm going to break these rules one day, even though no lightning will come and hit me now, but when I get to heaven, lightning will hit me then. I'll burn in hell then for the sins I did now. That's one way of seeing the Bible. What's Rabbi Akiva? And that's why Kavod Mahal is saying it. What is Akiva saying? What is the Torah? It's not a book of restrictions and laws and obligations. It's a tool by which to change the universe. It's a blueprint of creation. This is the way that you're able to fulfill your purpose of making the world a better place. It's like, by way of example, if you put a yoke onto an ox. Torah is called, we accept the yoke of heaven. What's a yoke? On one hand, the ox could look at the yoke as a restriction. The yoke is controlling it. You put a yoke on the shoulders of the ox, and now it's, on the other hand, when you put it on the shoulders, you know what happens? Now all of the power of the ox is able to be channeled into the yoke to pull the plow without any problem. You would tie it to its back, or tie it to its tail, or put it, hang it, but have to schlep it. But when it's on its shoulders and it's walking, it just walks and it just goes with it because the yoke is able to harness and transfer the tremendous power of an ox into the plow. So there's two ways of looking at Torah. One way to see the Torah is a yoke of restriction, a yoke of limitation, a yoke of problems that I never have no choice but to fulfill because otherwise I'm going to get punished. The other way, I can close that, thank you. The other way is to see the Torah as a tool of change, as an amazing technology, as an amazing tool. You're given an amazing tool, right? You get a very, very expensive camera. So, of course, you have to be careful with it. You got to use it right. You get a very, very expensive machine. You're very gentle how to use it the right way. Why? Because it's expensive. So, of course, I want to follow the rules of the Torah. Of course, I want to be careful in every detail of the Torah. But not because I'm afraid of punishment, but because I recognize the tremendous opportunity, the tremendous merit, the tremendous honor, and tremendous responsibility that I've been given by God choosing me to give me the Torah by which to change the world. Understand? That's what Rabbi Pirkei is saying. Don't tell them that they're putrid semen, that they're going to go back to the grave, they're going to get punished. Tell them who they really are. Tell them that they're divine rays, that they're going to return back to God. Tell them why they were given the opportunity. As I wrote in the title, it's the who, the what, and the why. The where and the why. Who are you? A reflection of God. Where are you going? Back home to where you came from. Why are you here? Because God gave you the blueprint of creation to make the world a better place. To see the person for who they really are. Not to get distracted by the things we do, by the way we behave, but to focus on who we are inside. I'll tell you a story. I want to tell you a story. Third Baba of the Rebbe, his name was Reb Shlomo. He was a Holocaust survivor. And after the war, he came to New York. And one Erev Shabbos, Friday afternoon, he's walking to shul for the evening Friday night services. And he meets a young man, walks past him on the way to the park, and the Rebbe greets him and says, "Come join us for Shabbos." He was obviously another Holocaust survivor. Like, you could tell. But some Jews think somehow that they don't look Jewish. They think that their nose got a circumcision, so they can't tell. I don't know. So the guy says to the Baba Rebbe, "Do I look Jewish?" Baba Rebbe says, "Of course. Come with us to shul." So he came, this man's name was Yankel, and he came to the shul, and he gave him a yarmulke to siddur, and actually, the Baba Rebbe knew who he was, knew his family, and told him to go be the chazan. This man, before the war, had been a chazan. Before the war, he was a religious Jew that knew how to daven beautifully, had a beautiful voice. He obviously hadn't opened the prayer book since the war. And the Rebbe didn't just have a shul, the Baba Rebbe said, go be the chazan. So he went to the Amud, and he went to the podium, he was the chazan. Next day, came to shul, came back, he was the chazan. This went for 2-3 weeks, and then 1 week, the man wasn't in shul. Friday night didn't come to shul. Shabbos day, he would always daven Musaf, he would be the chazan for the last 3 weeks. He wasn't in shul, so the Rebbe sent his son to go. His name was Naftali Tzvi. Naftali Tzvi became the next Rebbe Rebbe after his father Shlomo Halberstam. So he sent his son Naftali Tzvi to go find this man. Naftali Tzvi leaves shul Shabbos morning. Leaves shul. He goes out to the park near where they were davening, and he sees the man sitting on the park bench, reading a newspaper, smoking a cigarette. Smoking a cigarette on Shabbos, 1945, 1950, whatever year it is. You're like, that's like. This is like an act of defiance in public, smoking a cigarette in the park on Shabbos. He was all shaken up. So Naftali Tzvi comes running back to his father. The Baba Rebbe says, he can't, I found him, but he's smoking on Shabbos. So his father didn't hesitate and said, go back to him and tell him that we're waiting for him to be the chazan for Musaf. We're waiting for him. The podium is his to be the chazan. So this young Naftali Tzvi, he couldn't believe it. So he said to his father, but he's smoking. He's being Mechalel Shabbos. He's desecrating Shabbos in public. How could you ask him to be the leader of those services? So the Rebbe looked at it with a very stern look and said, he's smoking. The Germans, the Nazis are smoking. It's not him smoking. It's the Germans, it's the Nazis that in the Deutsch Reich. It's the Nazis that are smoking through him. Go back and tell them that I'm waiting for him to come to Shalom. So Naftali Tzvi told him. He went back to the park, came back to the guy. He said, the guy, my father's waiting for you to come down. So he says to Naftali Tzvi, did you tell your father that you saw me smoking in the park in public on Shabbos? So he said, yes. My father said that it's not you smoking, but it's the Nazis that are smoking in you. So the man said, I can't go to shul after smoking and daven. I can't. But tell your father, I promise next week I'm going to come to shul. Next week he was in shul. And he came every single week for a bunch of weeks afterwards. Shortly after that, the Rebbe then moved to Borough Park. They didn't see the chazan again. Naftali Tzvi never saw him again. 45 years later, the Baba Rebbe is sitting. There was a custom in shul. There's a custom that other Rebbes have. They give shulim. Shulim is they put out their hand and everyone walks by to shake the Rebbe's hand and give a blessing to the Rebbe. An older man comes. And he says to the Baba Rebbe, tells him that I was a chazan from 45 years ago that was smoking on Shabbos. My oldest grandchild is getting married. I want you to come officiate at the wedding. So the Baba Rebbe said, I don't officiate at weddings. There's this policy. Once you do it for one person, the Rebbe also stopped because then you have to do it for everyone. But I will come to Sheva Brachas. You tell me which one works out, and I'll come for one of the Sheva Brachas to honor you with the Sheva Brachas. So he came one night, and he came with the son of Naftali Tzvi, he was very much older Baba Rebbe then. He came, there was 150 people in the room. He says to the Rebbe, these are my 150 children and grandchildren and their kids, and all thanks to you for not giving up on me and recognizing that my smoking on Shabbos wasn't me. There was the Nazis inside me. The Rebbe turned to his son, to Naftali Tzvi, said, didn't I tell you it wasn't him who was smoking, it was the Nazis. This is an amazing story. And it 100% encapsulates the way that the Rebbe dealt with Jewry today. There is an approach of certain holy religious people, the Kavi B'Mahalo approach, which if you wanted to use modern day psychology language, you would call it the approach of negative psychology, pathology. We do a pathology report. What's wrong with this person? What traumas does he have? What baggage is he carrying? What triggers, etc. What's causing him to fail and to suffer and to have a terrible marriage and not know how to communicate and blah, 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 blah. However, the Rebbe's approach, Chassidus is the whole Chassidus approach, not the Rebbe's, the whole approach of Chassidus, which wasn't made up by Chassidus. Rabbi Akiva is saying it in the Mishnah. All these years ago, 1,500 years ago, however many years ago. Rabbi Akiva is teaching us. You have to recognize your power. In fact, how does he start? What's the opening words of the Mishnah? Of Mishnah 14. What's the opening words of Rabbi Akiva's statement? Chaviv Adam. Beloved is man. Not just that you're in the image of God. You're beloved. You're cherished. You're holy. God wants you. God wants you. And when did they say that God wants you? Every person. Before you even do a mitzvah, before you're a Jew, before you learn Torah. And even when you're a Jew, God loves you, as I said last week, not because you do mitzvah. God loves you because you're his child. You don't love your child because they get good in school. Or you don't love your child because they thanked you for dinner. You love your child even when they complain that you make the worst dinner in the world. Yeah, my wife has kids. My wife is an amazing cook. And my kids, they complain. There's nothing to eat. They don't like supper. And you still love your kids. Even though you made a delicious homemade supper from scratch, delicious, 3 different items, still complain. Delicious. And the point is, not only does he say you are beloved, God's telling you you're beloved. To know you're beloved. Not to get distracted. And that's another very famous teaching of Rabbi Akiva, the end of the Mishnayos. Rabbi Akiva says, Ashreichem Yisrael. How fortunate are you, O Israel, before whom you are purified. And who purifies you? Your Father in heaven. That is the story of Rabbi Akiva is telling us. To see ourselves not by what we've done wrong, but by who we were created in the image of, who we're children of, and we were going back to. Yeah. And I'll say one more story, but yeah.
It's like, I love.
No matter what.
It just gave me so much hope.
Exactly. That's exactly right. Yes. Okay, I have time for one last story that I want to say. Now, those who were at the Farbrengen yesterday heard my brother Shlomi. It's true. My brother Shlomi said the story yesterday, but it's a beautiful, beautiful story. And it perfectly brings out this idea. And we have 1 minute. It's not late yet. No, like overtime. So we have time for one last story, which is a story of a man called Nachum, who said by, this guy was from Soviet Russia. He came in the 70s. And he was hanging around. He came just after his bar mitzvah. He came as a young teenager to Crown Heights. He's hanging around Crown Heights. He used to like hang out at 770 all the time. Do by every davening. He was always around 770. Eventually, he got a job working for a construction company. And he started working construction. And when you're in construction, you're dirty, right? That's what construction is. You're painting. You're dirty. You're carrying. You're sweaty. You're dirty. Your hands are full of. And so he was dirty. He worked many, many hours. Time you finish work, you come home late at night. So he just stopped going to 770. And he stopped seeing the Rebbe, and many months went by that he had not been in 770 for whatever reason. It wasn't like he made a decision, I'm not going back to shul. Just he had to get up early in the morning to go to work, because he started working very early. He worked till very late. He was always tired. He was always dirty. So he stopped going to shul. Then one day, a friend of his is getting married. So his friend's getting married. So he didn't go to work. He went for a few hours. He gets all dressed up for the wedding, takes a shower, puts on a suit and a white shirt. I actually had a story. My wife shares after my brother said the story yesterday about there was the Lubavitcher who was building the sukkah outside of 770, and he was wearing jeans and a t-shirt. And all of a sudden he heard the Rebbe was coming, so he told the non-Jewish workers who were with him, so we're going to give you a coin for charity, keep it, it's precious, and he ran to hide. So the non-Jews, you can say to get the dollar, I'm running. I'm not letting the Rebbe see me in jeans and a t-shirt. He ran away to hide. So now he's wearing a white shirt, he's wearing a jacket, a suit, whatever. I'm saying he's all dressed, a hat for the wedding. So dressed for the wedding. So he came to the Rebbe. The Rebbe gave him $1 Sunday afternoon. So for the wedding, he came to the Rebbe to get dollars. So the Rebbe comes to the Rebbe, and the Rebbe is giving him the dollar, but the Rebbe is not letting go of the dollar. So they're both holding on to the dollar at the same time. As you can imagine the scene, the Rebbe gave a dollar and you got moved on. He gets the dollar, the Rebbe is still holding it. The Rebbe is looking at him, and the Rebbe asks him, "Wo bist du? Where are you? Or where have you been?" It's the same words. She was totally saying Yiddish zumisht. He didn't even where am I? The Rebbe's not letting go of the dollar. He's trying to take the dollar from the Rebbe. The Rebbe's not letting go of the dollar. So he's like just standing like totally blink. No words come to his mind. He can't think of anything, just the fact that Rebbe is not giving him the dollar. So Rabbi Grolner says to him, Rebbe wants to know, where have you been? Where are you? So he says, Ich bin da. I'm here. Brilliant, right? I'm here. Nothing else came to his mind. So Rebbe asks him, "For was kommst du nicht?" Not asking where you are at this moment, asking where are you holding in life? What are you up to? Where are you? I haven't seen you in many, many years. I haven't seen you. Where are you in life? Where are you holding? That's what the Rebbe is asking. So he says to the Rebbe, I'm not coming as ich bin allemal schmutzig. I'm always dirty. It's very, very powerful words. Ich bin allemal schmutzig. I'm always dirty. I say this in a physical sense, in a spiritual sense, in an emotional sense. I don't feel clean. I'm dirty. I'm working construction. My clothing is dirty. I don't know if his heart was dirty. His soul was dirty. I don't feel like I can come because I'm dirty. So I'm in a state of dirtiness. So I've stopped coming. And that's what you're asking. Where am I? Because I'm lost. I'm dirty. And the Rebbe said to him, Kum wie du bist, aber kum. Come as you are, but come. So you're dirty? Okay. Come dirty. But still come. Meaning, what happened in the story? This is a very, very powerful story. What happened in the story? He thought if I'm dirty, I can't come. Because he was defining himself on his clothing, on his emotions, on where he was holding, on what he was doing. So since I'm working construction and jeans is not compatible with the Rebbe. And the Rebbe says to him, don't get distracted by what you're wearing. Don't get scared off by the fact that you're dirty. However you are, in the core, inside, who are you? You're beautiful, you're holy, you're pure. So, okay, you're wearing dirty clothing, but I still want to see you. Kum wie du bist, aber kum. Come as you are, but come. And that is so exactly the message of this mission of Rabbi Akiva, and so the message of the Rebbe, so the message of the oil, so on, that we have to recognize not just how dirty we may think we are, or what we just did, or what we said. We have to remember that. We have to work on cleaning that. But ultimately, what should we meditate on? What should we be thinking deeply about? Not that we're nothing, not that we're dirty, not that we're going to return to the cemetery, but that we are holy. We are reflections of God, and we're children of God who will return to God. And we've been given the tools by which to fulfill God's purpose for creation. We've been given the tools, we're given the wisdom, we're given the Torah, we're given the knowledge to be able to transform the world and to bring Mashiach. Now, my friends, the message for us. Thank you all for watching. Thank you all for joining. Thank you all. Thank you, Carmen. Thank you, Louise. Thank you all from Australia. Thank you, Louise, from joining from Sydney. Thank you, Joseph. I appreciate the kind words. I don't know your name because in Russian it's opposed. Sophistication of violence world jobs. Yeah. Thank you, Andrea. Thank you all. Obviously, hi. Thank you, Jacqueline. If you're watching, let me know where you're watching from. Thank you, Jillian. Glad you enjoyed. Thank you for watching all the way from the beautiful New York. Art, I'm glad you enjoyed. Thank you, Michael, for sending greetings from Columbus, Ohio. Thank you, Joe, for sending greetings from Olympia, Washington State. Shalom to you. Hello, Dora Khan, joining us from Pennsylvania. Hello, Benny, watching us from Portland. Hello, Yosef, joining us from Alabama. Amazing. We have, one second. Lost it. Yeah. Thank you, Lori. Yeah. Same chapter. Food. Rabbi Kiva is a teacher. Yeah. I mean, there's truth to what he's saying. There's a lot of truth to what he's saying. Yeah, but we should focus on real Hasidus, this approach on the positive. Yes, sir. Shaitan.
I learned yoina.
A yoina? No. Yoina is a bird. Shaitan. Shaitan is a fool. Yeah. Thank you, Joe. Thank you, Laura. Yes. Yeah, Shaitan. Shaitan is a fool. Yeah. Bist a shoite. Never heard that? No. Nicht, huh? Yeah. Shalom, Carmen, joining us from Texas. Thank you. Thank you, Stephanie. Hope you enjoy from, yes, Andrew, it's good to see you. Thank you, Joseph. Thank you all. Laila Tov. I shall see you, B'ezrat Hashem, next week, same time, same place. Okay, now let's